On this edition of Independent Sources, the affordable library. Controversy swirls over the New York Public Library's efforts to create affordable housing in the city. And Bronx illiteracy, the push to get more people in that impoverished borough to read at a time when estimates say 1 in 4 New Yorkers are functionally illiterate.
Independent Sources, your window to the city's ethnic and immigrant communities. Here's your host, Garry Pierre-Pierre.
The New York Public Library is coming under fire for its plan to convert some of its space at the Inwood Library in the Bronx into affordable housing. The NYPL touts the initiative as a means of doing their part to address the city's housing crisis while earning some much-needed cash to continue funding the expanding services they provide to the public. On the other hand, there are opponents who claim that the library is selling off its land without actually consulting people who live in the neighborhood. We'll explore this issue in 2 parts this week. Later, I'll speak with one of the plan's opponents, Charles Warren, the president of the Committee to Save the NYPL. Before that, Crystal Lowe filed this report on her interview with Julie Sandorf, the president of the Charles H. Refson Foundation. The grant funding organization is one of the NYPL's partners in the Affordable Housing Initiative.
There's something like 40 million visitors to libraries a year, and that's more than museums and sports stadiums visitation combined. So they're central to our communities and our civic life.
The New York Public Library has been a staple in every New York City neighborhood for over a century. In an effort to keep up with the times and its doors open, the NYPL has had to come up with innovative ways to keep its community equipped with free books, information, ideas, and education.
They offer everything from dual language toddler programs to a whole series of after school, to ESL, you name it. And they are deeply engaged with their patrons in the library and the larger community.
The library system's expanding role has created a need for more funding. However, that's been limited because the NYPL has seen its budget cut significantly since 2008.
The city has to make a lot of very hard decisions. And because of that, we have to be really smart about how we use limited city funds.
In light of that, the NYPL has been forced to become more creative with their fundraising. Most recently, it's partnered with the Robin Hood Foundation, a philanthropic organization dedicated to funding and creating programs that help the city's underprivileged neighborhoods. This partnership has resulted in a plan to develop affordable housing on library property in the Bronx.
So you've got a situation, you've got a model, both in Inwood and at Sunset Park, where you have communities experiencing significant development pressures and libraries that needed significant renovation work to properly serve their communities. In the Sunset Park case, double the size of the library while providing 100% affordable apartments. 50% of them are for Sunset Park residents, while the ownership of that library will be maintained by Brooklyn Public Library. This is not a developer giveaway. The Inwood model is very similar. And the generosity of the Robin Hood Foundation is basically there are costs saved in doing this mixed model. Studies have estimated that there are savings upwards of 30 to 40% of just construction costs in this mixed model to the library.
But not everyone is happy with this. Advocates have accused the NYPL of not being transparent and shrinking library resources. However, Sandorf says that's just not true.
For me, the bewildering thing is both it's not clear in the name of transparency who exactly these advocates represent, and secondly, it's not clear in the name of truth and community engagement why there is such an interest in spreading misinformation. When in fact the facts of the sort of basic structure of these projects are public information. I don't get it.
Sandorf adds that the NYPL is engaging in a series of evening meetings and workshops in Inwood to ask the community how they want the library space to be used.
As long as we hold true to the core values and purpose of a community library, what this model does is improve on it and provide desperately needed affordable housing for the people who are living in those communities and for the people of New York City.
Moving forward, Sandorf believes that the NYPL will continue to use innovative and creative ways to expand their system and their budget.
Community space is at such a premium that the demands on the library and the need for the libraries and the desire of the libraries to meet those demands is stronger than ever.
Crystal Lowe, Independent Sources.
Thanks, Charles, for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Before we start, I would like our audience to know that we did ask the New York Public Library to be present for this interview, but they did not accept our offer to be in studio. A representative of the NYPL was in contact with one of our producers via email and offered this in part about the Inwood project. The city is looking for places for affordable housing. This project, which would be executed by a developer and paid for by a private donor, would in theory solve two problems at once. From our perspective, NYPL, we would get a brand new library owned by either the city or us that is at least the same size as the current branch without having to utilize coveted city capital funds. Charles, it sounds like a reasonable proposal. The city is looking to provide affordable housing, and the library will get a brand new library. What's wrong with this picture?
Well, they haven't consulted the neighborhood very carefully, and I think those are the people who use the library. Typically, New York Public and the city have put together a deal that they're very sure of before they really ask anything of the neighborhood. And now they ask of the neighborhood what it is that they want once the plans are well advanced. And that's, the neighbors have some objections to that. Now, there are other reasons too. New York Public has a track record, as does Brooklyn Public Library and Queens Public Library, all of them do, of these real estate schemes to replace old libraries. And very often what happens is the new libraries they replace beautiful old facilities with are smaller and sometimes underground. Now, 53rd Street is a great example of what...
Before we get to 53rd Street, I'm coming to that a little bit. But the New York Public Library officials have said they've been transparent. They have meetings where community members can voice their opinions on these projects. What do you say to that?
On other projects, I have been present and deeply involved in New York Public Library's consultations with the public, and I think the neighbors feel, as I do about those consultations, is that they are really after the fact. And so if the neighborhood wants to say, well, we'd like the windows a little bit bigger, or we'd like the door on the left side instead of the right, of course, everybody is responsive. But if they question for a moment why they need to replace a library that was added to and remodeled less than 20 years ago, that is beloved by the neighborhood, that is freestanding, that has empty land next to it and so is capable of expansion as the need arises, those questions are not answered. They're not addressed because the deal has already been thought through.
And so what's the biggest question here? Is the fact that the library will be shrunk, or is that the affordable housing that they've been promised will not come to bear?
Well, for example, in Brooklyn Heights, where there was a very controversial and similar scheme for the library there, affordable housing was promised, and now that deal is rolling forward and nobody still knows where the affordable housing is going to go. So, of course, that's a different institution, but we're worried. We're worried that the library will be underground, that it will be smaller, that it will not have the intimate character that the existing library has. There are all kinds of things that haven't been addressed. The library is very vague about what they issue in RFP, request for proposals, and we don't know what that is. That should be reviewed by the community.
Let's go back to the 53rd Street example you cited. What was wrong with that example?
53rd Street was a very large, beautifully built public library above ground with great collections that served the neighborhood. So there are a lot of foreign language speakers in that neighborhood. They had a great collection of foreign language books. They had a great collection of children's paraphernalia and books. It was a terrific library. It had meeting rooms. It was open for classes. And they sold this off to as a similar kind of real estate deal, only with high-cost housing up above. And what the result was is, of course, it's a brand new library.
State of the art, right?
Shiny and new, but it has many fewer books, much less space, and it's almost entirely underground. And so instead of going to the library and looking out the window at the Museum of Modern Art, you go to the library and you look, if you're lucky, you're in part of the library that has a little tiny glimpse of the street up above.
But they would argue that it's a beautiful library, state of the art, modern look about the way a library of the future should be.
But the Library of the Future still needs books, and this has many, many fewer books. The foreign language collection is gone, but the foreign language speakers in that neighborhood have not gone. The UN is right nearby. Mm-hmm. They still need those books, and so it's a great inconvenience to them. And it took, I think, 8 years. So there was a long period of time when people weren't served, which is in Inwood, by the way, another concern that when they, less than 20 years ago when they remodeled the library, it was years that they were in little trailers. Now, if you're 5 or 6 years old, those are crucial years when you need a library. And nobody's been very clear about what provisions are going to be made in the interim.
So Inwood is scheduled to start construction in 2019. In the interim, what do you plan on doing to make sure that what happened in 53rd Street does not repeat here, and that the 100% affordable housing being promised are kept?
There's very well organized opposition to this project in the neighborhood, and the treasurer of our organization is an Inwood resident. And so he's leading our effort with the community. We're not trying to roll into the community and say, this is what you ought to do. We're trying to support what they want. And so we would like there to be an open dialogue about whether it's an appropriate place for a tall building. Let's start with that. Inwood is a 5-6-story neighborhood. It's pretty consistent. And there's plenty of vacant land. There's I believe, city-owned vacant land. And maybe an alternative would be to build the low-cost housing there, and even if they put the library there, which we do not advocate, but if they did, then they wouldn't have, then the library could operate until the new library was ready and the community would be served. But better still, just build the low-cost housing somewhere nearby. It's not that anybody opposes low-cost housing. We just oppose diminished library services.
As training, you're an architect by training, right?
I am.
How much is that background helping you in this sort of like conflict with the New York Public Library?
Well, I wrote a book about Carrere and Hastings, co-wrote a book about Carrere and Hastings, who were the architects of the 42nd Street Library. And in that struggle with the public library, it was very useful because I am very familiar with that building and its history. I am less familiar with the Inwood Library, although the architect is the architect is the same architect who did the Naumburg Band Shell in Central Park, for example. It's a lovely 1950s era building. It has beautiful cast aluminum trim. So of course, those aspects of our built environment are of concern to me. But also, I'm interested in urbanism and city planning, and there is a school of thought that public buildings ought to be prominent, independent buildings that are an expression of our civic life. And when you make them nothing but storefronts and skyscrapers, it diminishes the physical environment. It diminishes our kind of the structure of our city, making it's no longer as comprehensible as it was. So very often, it seems to me it's a good idea to keep independent, freestanding public buildings, and they can be added to.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Charles Warren, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Still to come, how one advocate is getting people in the Bronx to read at a time when some advocates say that nearly a quarter of the city's population is functionally illiterate. Thanks for staying tuned. You've heard the headlines lately. The Bronx has no bookstores. Some skeptics may not agree. What's not up for debate is that the city's illiteracy rates are high and that the Bronx is particularly hard hit because of the extreme levels of poverty in that borough. I spoke with Ron Cavanaugh, the publisher of Mosaic Literacy magazine, about some of the reasons for these high rates of illiteracy in the Bronx and what he's doing to address it. So, Ron, can you assess the illiteracy problem in the Bronx?
You know, one of the issues we have in the Bronx is, because people think it's a bookstore issue, and it's also an issue of immigration. Mm-hmm. We have so many different populations in the Bronx.
Such as?
So we have a growing Ghanaian community, Dominican, Puerto Rican. We have a growing Mexican community in the Bronx. And they're all kind of...
you have Bangladeshi community.
Bangladeshi community, exactly. And they are all first generations. So now they're trying to find their ways into literacy and into literature, and how do they, on the one hand, keep their own cultures and language vibrant in their homes, but also have their kids and their extended family engage English.
How is that different in the Bronx? Because this, you just described New York City.
Right, right. So it's not really different in the Bronx. One of the things about the Bronx is we have one of the poorest congressional districts in the Bronx. So therefore, the schools are underserved and the libraries are underserved. So we don't have the same support system as the rest of the city may have. So that becomes a challenge. But it's also all of these new communities using the resources that we have. So many of these communities have libraries. There are libraries all throughout the city, but are they going into the libraries? Mm-hmm. When they go in the libraries, how are they being engaged? Mm-hmm. Are they being engaged in their native language? Are they forced to, if their language skills are not strong, are they forced to then kind of communicate through English? So there are these kind of barriers that young kids may not be having because they're kind of in the school system and they're learning English, but their parents and older siblings may be still having.
But I read during research for this segment that you are having that problem in the schools. In fact, there were several students who sued the school system because they received a diploma and yet couldn't read.
Couldn't read, right, right. You know, the thing about the school system, and I'm kind of venturing into a topic that is not my specialty.
Sure.
They get income, they get their funding based on graduation rates. So it's kind of incumbent upon them to graduate a certain number of kids, whether they can actually read in English or speak English or not. So they may be proficient in math, they may be proficient in the sciences, but you really need, if you're going to be here, you really need to speak English at least as a second language, mm-hmm. if not a primary language. So again, that's not my strong area of focus, but I think that's the case, that a lot of schools still have to, you know, maintain their funding, and what they wind up doing is just trying to push as many kids through the system as they can.
So now, how officials, city or private sector, how are we dealing with this very serious problem?
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we're doing in the Bronx, and there's a coalition of us sort of working together to try to find different ways of engaging the community with literature and books. About 5 years ago, we started the Bronx Book Fair. And one of the things we really try to do is have different communities involved in this. So we have ESL, we have
English as a second language.
Right, I'm sorry. We try to have Spanish authors in the book fair, and not just like the generic kind of Spanish term, but we try to seek out Mexican and Ecuadorian and Puerto Rican, just to really, because sometimes we try to lump all these cultures together, and they're really like completely separate cultures.
Sure.
So we try to have authors that speak specifically to each nationality and each culture. That's one of the things that we're doing. I just received a grant from Partnerships with Parks to do readings in the park. So that's something else that the park system is doing, trying to encourage people to come use their facilities in the park. And you know how the parks are in the summer in New York. Everyone is in the parks. So what we're trying to do is engage more people wherever they are, not force them to kind of come into libraries or into schools, but if they're going to be in the park, we're going to go into the park.
How is that different from the Literary Freedom Project?
So the Literary Freedom Project is a nonprofit I started about 15 years ago. The grant that we received is under the Literary Freedom Project. So that's one of the many things that we do. About 3 years ago, we received another grant, again, to engage the community to start book clubs throughout the Bronx. We started it, the grant money ran out, but it was really successful for the couple of sessions that we had. It was at Casita Maria Education and Art Center in the South Bronx. And what we selected a book. The first book we selected was Down These Mean Streets by P.D. Thomas. And the group read it, and we had a facilitator. We met every week to discuss the book. We also did I'm going to call it a class trip because some of us were kind of old, but we went into the field and we tried to explore on a deeper level what was going on in the book and how it related to these communities.
So on a personal level, why are you so passionate about this issue?
I think that books are like the nexus of our culture. We can't sure that there are traditions passed down from generation to generation, but how do we learn about those other cultures? How do we engage different people? And I think books are sort of the most facile way to do this, the easiest way to connect cultures to people, the easiest way to learn about our histories is through books. So that's why I really try to encourage, plus the whole artistic creativity of books. There's nothing like, losing yourself in a great book. I mean, movies are wonderful and TV is great, but, to read a really good book is nothing like that.
It gets you to think when you have to follow.
You have to follow, and plus the book takes you from one place and expands from there. It is not like, when people want to find out about Malcolm X, you can do a Google search and you'll get a paragraph, and some people are happy. But read his book, read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Yeah. That's how you get the full expanse of different people and cultures and histories.
So how are you using Mosaic Magazine, the magazine in which you founded and the publisher, in this effort? Yeah,
one of the things we started doing about 5 years ago now, we started creating lesson plans for educators. The lesson plans are specifically based around literature and culture. So each issue of the magazine in the back has a lesson plan, and it could be on a different person or topic. So recently we focused on James Baldwin and Audre Lorde. The next issue we're focusing on Khalif Browder, the young man who was killed, he committed suicide after spending 3 years on Rikers Island. Yes. So we're doing one on him. In the future, we'll be focused on Jamel Shabazz, the photographer. We just really love how his work kind of personifies blackness in a positive way. So we're going to do a lesson plan on him. The lesson plans are really important if we are trying to get teachers to engage students. We want to give them tools so that when they go into the classroom, they can say, there are points in these lesson plans that I can now transfer into my lessons and hopefully encourage more young people to read. Sure. So how do you gauge success in this endeavor? That's a tough question. So one of the things we try to track are our metrics, just see how many people are downloading our lesson plans, how many people come to the book fair. Last year we had, I would say, over 600 people. So we want to have 800 people. That's our goal, to have 800 people come, throughout the day, May 6th on a Saturday, come into the Bronx Library Center. So that's kind of like how we gauge. We don't have a way to assess if our efforts are increasing literacy. we do have ways to assess, like more people are visiting our website, more people are downloading our lesson plans, more people are participating in our programs.
You know, I want to pick up on this point about downloading, because we know there's been talk about the digital divide in neighborhoods like the South Bronx and other parts of the city. How is that affecting your work?
So it hasn't affected my work too much, because we do everything digitally also. So we print the lesson plans, we print the magazines, but they also can be viewed online. There are people who haven't made that transition yet, and they're just either printing hard copies or they're just focused on doing things digitally, which can be equally problematic because all of our communities are not online on a regular basis.
So last question, what are the consequences if we don't address this problem seriously enough?
Yeah, marginalization. You know, if we don't know our culture, if we don't know our history, if we don't know the academics that are included in books, you know, how will we participate fully in the system? You know, this system now is favoring intelligent people, so you really have to read more than less.
So we're going to have to leave this conversation here.
Okay.
Ron Kavanaugh, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.